radio contact.
What kind of people are we?
I am in radio contact.
What kind of people are we?
Attention crew, this is your Captain Caliban speaking. This is a supplemental episode of Enterprising Individuals, where we bring you news and tidbits from the world of Trek, also interviews with special guests, and a few little surprises along the way. This week, we're getting right to the good stuff, as we have an interview with two very special guests. Today, we're talking to Bjo and John Trimble, two frankly historic names in the history of Trek. They're probably best known as the couple that started the letter-writing campaign that helped save Star Trek, the original series, from cancellation after its second season. But beyond that, they are lifelong fans and nerds, and they're still active in fandom to this day. And we've got a great informative interview with them about their history with Trek, their history with cons and fandom, and some great stories from their time, just loving this whole thing as much as we all do. We'll get right to it, and I will be back at the end of the show to wrap it up. And with that, let's get underway. I'm talking today with Bjo and John Trimble, legendary Star Trek fans and familiar to many Trekkies as the couple behind the letter-writing campaign that saved Star Trek from cancellation at the end of its second season. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Oh, thank you.
You're more than welcome.
On our show, we usually begin by asking our guests how they became Star Trek fans, whether they watched it as kids or if they discovered it later in life. But in your case, you were sci-fi fans and you were active in the convention scene before Star Trek was even on. I mean, Trek sort of discovered you.
We were. In a way, yes. Our first taste of Star Trek was when Gene Roddenberry brought his 3 of his episodes to a science fiction convention.
At the World Science Fiction Convention in 1966, Labor Day weekend, so the show hadn't aired yet.
So it started there with us and you know, a few hundred other people who were in the room, but and it's just gone on from there.
Did you get a sense of, like, how did the audience receive it, the people that got to watch it? Did people seem to like it?
For the most part.
Well, you know, up till then, basically what we'd gotten were kind of replays on TV of movies, like There's an Ugly Alien, Let's Kill It, and you know, and science is kind of to be doubted because you never know what these people are up to, and so on. And any time we were given supposedly a really good show, it very quickly devolved into, you know, either a kiddie show or scripts that were so tired you just wanted to scream. So when he showed the 3 episodes, we all liked him, but it was one of these for the science fiction fans where let's wait and see, you know. So we didn't exactly go absolutely wild as history has it now, but you know, I mean, everybody.
Yeah, it was guarded enthusiasm.
Yeah,
okay.
that was about it. And we kept waiting for it to become either a kiddie show like Lost in Space, or just, you know, the scripts kind of run downhill fairly fast as they did in like Time Tunnel, or, you know.
Where it's to the bottom of the rating. Yeah.
And, you know, and so when we discovered that, Gene had actually come up with this great idea of, in fact, hiring science fiction authors to do his stories for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that wasn't done in Hollywood. First, because Hollywood didn't trust authors, and never, as you can tell. And then, secondly, because the authors were known to be, you know, difficult to deal with and all of that. And Gene liked them and made friends with them, and used their stories. And it was an amazing combination.
We've talked before on this show, on my show, about the influence of the early Star Trek, on sci-fi writers on early Star Trek, one of them in particular being Harlan Ellison. And I heard that you ran into Harlan Ellison many years ago at a convention.
In 1953.
Oh, wow.
He 52. He and I are 3 months apart in age. So he always teases me because I'm the oldest.
Right.
He's not sure he wants to hang around with old women. So anyway.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
I give him his back. You know, we've been friends and somewhat guarded friends at times for many, many years now.
We can tell how Harlan feels about us if he greets us as John and Bjo or Mr. and Mrs. Trimble. If it's Mrs. Trimble, we know he's just at us for something.
He has been known to start sentences, while we all know and love Mr. and Mrs. Trimble. But, you know, an amazing author, an amazing person in general. Everything you've ever heard about him is probably true. But
it's frequently taken out of context, however, which makes him seem worse than he is.
Yeah, and also people don't realize that there may have been a reason leading up to whatever it was he did, and you know, so it's. I'm not excusing him. I'm just explaining him.
Sure. And I mean, he clearly had an influence on early Star Trek. I mean, writing The City on the Edge of Forever and also being instrumental in the show coming back after its first season for writing to the SFWA Association, trying to get people to contact NBC, similar to the way that you guys did yourselves after the second season.
Well, yes, but Harlan appealed mostly to the writers who were going to kiss jobs goodbye, you know, at the show went off the air.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, they had a vested interest, right? And we went out to fandom. And that was a big difference, frankly. And our campaign spread like wildfire. Who knew? I mean, you know, people keep saying, well, you know, did you know all this was going to happen? No, of course we didn't. I mean, you know, even our wildest hopes, we hadn't figured it was going to go into the size and spread that it did.
What was Gene like in those days? What were your impressions of him when you met him?
Oh, well, yeah. When we first met him, he was trying to get some of his costumes at the same convention he brought the episodes into my fashion show, which was timed very carefully for the people we already had. Well, he'd hired 3 models, including a cute little model that was just the size of Sherry Jackson to wear the little crossover jumpsuit in What Are Little Girls Made Of.
Little Girls, right.
Like Sherry Jackson.
She did. So these models were looking at kissing a weekend stint goodbye, and they offered to help me with the fashion show, which was
these starters,
yeah,
get people off the stage when they'd been there long enough.
And as a result, I said yes, after Gene had talked to me about 15 minutes over a cup of coffee. And I liked him. I liked him a lot. I found him very attractive in a big Irish mix sort of way. It, you know, he had, and he said, and he told us his concept. And there's something very, very compelling about someone telling you their dream. And that's what he did. And we were both very, very impressed by that.
You were both sci-fi and fantasy fans when you were younger. What was it for you about Star Trek that made it stand out from other sci-fi programs? You mentioned something like the Time Tunnel before.
It was the first time we'd seen really adult science fiction dealing with concepts that were somewhat complicated
Sure.
on TV, and that was amazing. It sort of brought to life what we'd been reading for many, many years.
Well, and you know, one of the fine examples when I said there's an ugly alien, let's kill it, from the movies and early TV, was the Horta in Star Trek, where indeed, you know, not exactly the most beautiful alien in the world, and she turned out to be a mother protecting her egg.
Right.
And that was, you know, I mean, that really touched us because it just, you know, tore us away from the old concept, and we were glad of it.
Let's talk about your campaign to save Star Trek after the second season when it was rumored to be canceled. How did you get the idea to start your campaign?
Okay. We were on the set of The Deadly Years. They were filming the scene where Shatner has gotten his youth back, you know, after Dr. McCoy has discovered the magic elixir, as so often did. And it's the part where he jumps down off the stage and then grabs his back like he's still got an alien cricket in.
Right.
And we'd seen other episodes being filmed. Gene had invited us to the set whenever we were in town, so we would frequently go to the studio and watch something being filmed. The atmosphere on the cast and crew was totally different this time than it had been other times. It was much more down. It had been a very up set until then. So we knew something was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked several people around, and nobody'd give us a straight answer. So we did what you do on a TV set or a movie set when you want to know what's going on. You go over and ask craft services.
Sure.
They're sort of the Radar O'Reilly of movie sets, and
Right.
they make it their business to know all of the latest.
So the guy that we were talking to at craft services, he says, it isn't official yet, but the words come down, the show's going to be canceled at the end of the season.
Now, interestingly enough, years later, we talked to an NBC executive, and he said, you couldn't possibly have known that because we hadn't issued anything yet. And I said, it's the ground troops who find out things far faster than the generals.
Yeah.
And he didn't understand what I was saying. And I said, there you go.
So we had to leave. We lived in Oakland at the time, at the other, in the northern part of the state. So we had to leave and go home. So we're driving up the Central Valley, which was a longer trip in those days than it is now. And we're talking to each other and
about how sad that was.
Yeah,
and,
it just, and I made the mistake or the whatever of saying to Bjo, it's really sad what the change there was, and that the fact that the show is going to be canceled. There has to be something we can do about that. Now I should know better than to say that to her. Because we spent the rest of the trip formulating a campaign.
Well, we had to do this out of whole cloth because, so far as we knew, no one else had done it. And so that was a little scary. We had no template, no map. And
Right.
First thing I did was say, well, we better phone Gene and find out if he's thrown in the towel, because if he has, there's no sense in doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so we got home and called Gene. And now, he was a great storyteller, so you never really quite knew if all of this was true. You understand that. He said, oh, my gosh, I just walked out of a meeting where I had said if there was some way to reach the fans.
And we fell in his lap, as it were.
So, whether that particular story is true or not, I don't know. But he did know by that time he needed to reach the fans and fast. And we were it. Then I went around real fast then to secretaries in corporate buildings and asked them what about a letter made them, throw it away or file it in the nut file or answer it themselves or put it across the boss's desk. And I got this information, and then we wrote it up in a sort of a little list of do's and don'ts. And why? Because, of course, all fans have to know why.
So we put this in that format, the letter, and then we typed a stencil with it all on it and put it on a mimeograph machine.
Okay.
Tell people to go look up mimeograph.
Right.
Yeah. And John hand cranked the mimeograph machine for
thousands of letters.
Yeah, well, over time. The first one, it was about 250, 300 letters.
So, we said in this thing, these are the suggestions. And then we said, now your task is to write a letter, copy this information, and send it out to 10 friends with the information that they should each write a letter and copy this information and send it out to 10 of their friends.
Now, after the campaign, the Washington Post phoned, and I answered the phone, and they asked how the campaign had been made to spread so wide. And I told them the power of 10, right?
Sure.
And the person doing the interviewing said, well, that can't be right. It's too simple. And I said, maybe right, and hung up. And they said, in the house, they said, you just hung up on the Washington Post. I said, well, he just called me a liar. Hold on. So anyway, it does work. And of course, with the computer now, I have to say you can do a power of 100.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, we had a somewhat of a mailing list ourselves, and that's what we first used. And then we asked the convention where, in the convention Worldcon where Gene had shown the episode, for their mailing list, and they gave it to us.
That would never happen today.
Yes. And we asked a book dealer that we knew who did a lot of mail order stuff for his list, and he was a wonderful guy. He sent it to us without any trouble. So we were gathering lists of various people. One of the people we contacted was in Mensa. He put it in the Mensa newsletter.
Okay.
Another guy worked for IBM, and he put it in their newsletter.
So, and the thing was I said, if you're paying bills, in those days you did it by mail, put one of these flyers in the mail with it.
Sure.
And believe it or not, we got, back answers. And so we really we had weekends where fans would come over to the house. We'd have 15 or 20 fans in the house, and they were, addressing envelopes, and we had a typewriter. There was no computer. And
collating sheets of paper, because there were about 3 sheets that went into this thing.
And folding, we used up 3 little folding machines and set it off. Never mind, do it by. And then they had just introduced that brand new thing, zip codes.
So I had to go down to the post office and learn how to do things, sort things by zip. And
you see, this is why I've been so disturbed all these years by John not getting credit, because you can see that we were running in harness. There was no, my doing anything special or something. And so I say that part of that was Jim and Fled. But yes. Another part of it, probably equal part, is you've got 2 names here. John, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's name is John, or Big Joe. Totally, so they lit on that. Well, and they didn't want to talk to a middle management person, which was John was at the time. They found it, of course, women's web, more interesting to talk to the little housewife who spoke up. And I grated my back teeth on that one, I'll tell you. So this grew, and over the years it became just the lady who staged Star Trek, and that isn't true.
Sure. Well, we're here to set the record straight today.
Absolutely. Well, John had to learn this cockamamie zip code thing, and for bulk mail, which is the only way we could afford to mail it out, you had to bundle packages that went out to the zip mail, zip code thing. And if you didn't, all of your stuff sat under a postal sorting machine until they got around to doing it. Sorted it in zip
wouldn't go anywhere.
And then you had to find out how to bundle it to go to whichever, the post office that would distribute it to that zip code or that set of zip codes. It was pretty arcane, but I caught on to it.
It would all be email today.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly, yes. And that's, we, about 12 or 13 years ago, we got a phone call from a friend at JPL, and Jet Propulsion Lab, and he said, we're in danger of having the Luddites cancel the Pluto program. And we've worked on this for a decade, and, or more. And if we miss
this window,
it's 288 years before we'll have Pluto this close to us again. And could you help? Well, I do know that one person at JPL or somewhere is credited for getting all of this done. But the fans can pat themselves on the back, because, as a matter of fact, I love this. After working for weeks to get one mailing out in 1967, now I did one letter, called up all the Star Trek people I knew and all the fan clubs and all of this, and hit one button, and contacted in that instance almost 1,000 people.
Or more.
Yeah.
More.
And it was one of these, woo! So
No zip codes now.
There were enough letters into the powers that be that New Horizons was past Pluto.
So,
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so cool, and I think that Star Trek fans can be very proud of themselves there.
They should be, yeah. You and John were part of the movement to have the first space shuttle named Enterprise as well. Was that a similar process to the Star Trek campaign?
It was.
Same thing.
But it wasn't us that started it. A couple of guys back in the Washington area started it. And now they asked us how to run a campaign, and we sent them all the information. We've always shared that information. And they chose to ignore it, and then they found her. And all of a sudden, they said, will you take this over? And by the way, we've already sent you all the information. Like, well, nonsense.
Right.
And so we
using the same process that we done with the Space Star Trek campaign, we did let's name the first space shuttle Enterprise. We had no idea it was a test vehicle and wasn't going into space.
Well, yeah.
But on the other hand, that was okay too, because all of the Enterprises from the wooden ships on up have all had in some way or another had experimentation.
Experimental vessels and first prototypes.
Right.
The aircraft carrier Enterprise that was in World War II was the first purpose-built carrier. Since we didn't know who to address these things to in NASA, we just asked everybody to send letters to President Ford, and they were going to name it Constitution. The night before the day before the rollout, Ford said to the NASA people, I rather fancy the name Enterprise for this first shuttle. So the shuttle's at Edward. It has Constitution on it. So they hurriedly painted that out and painted in Enterprise. And when they rolled her out the next morning, the paint was still wet on Enterprise.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, poor John couldn't go to the rollout because he was working, and at that time he couldn't get time off, and that was unfortunate. He should have just called in sick, really. So
right, yeah.
So I went out and with Jerry Cornell and Larry Niven, and they didn't quite know what to do with me. I'm at the reception. Everybody's kind of wandering around. Now, some of the guys would come and flip over their coat lapel, which had secret Trekkie or closet Trekkie on a button under their lapel.
Okay.
Nobody had anything Star Trek out in the open, and.
Right.
So when we were going to the rollout, nobody knew what to do with me. I wasn't a VIP in their eyes, and where would they put me? And so one of the little secretaries came up to me and she said, "Would you like a press pass?" Cool. So, and then
one of the press guys who was standing nearby says, "Oh yeah, take one." He said, "We get lots more handouts and more food and booze than the VIPs do."
And it turned out that was true. So, and I had a grand time. The other journalists took me under their wing, and it was just, and then they rolled this incredible machine out from behind a hangar, and the VIPs were sitting over across the way from it, and I was standing under the wing vane as they rolled it out, and we were the press was that close.
Wow,
it's so cool.
Yeah. The fan campaign to bring back canceled shows is now it's a common occurrence in these days, and of course social media makes it a lot easier. But why do you think it worked at the time? I mean, you worked hard to make it happen, and many people responded as well. But why do you think that NBC listened?
Well, we got enough letters into NBC.
Sure.
And their idea is, the common belief is that each letter represents 1,000 people or some number they pull out of the air. So I think, frightened them a little.
And they had to hire extra people to open all the envelopes because we told fans mail it in business size envelopes, and they NBC didn't want to take any chances that one of those envelopes might contain business information, and so they hired extra people to open all the envelopes. Only of course to find Star Trek.
Right.
Which isn't right. But yeah, and then many years after that, again over at Paramount, John and I met an NBC person. He says very snarkily, "Well, we didn't get more than 10,000 letters." And I said, "Wow, you mean that we changed history with only 10,000 letters?"
Right.
We must be more powerful than we thought.
Right.
That was not what he wanted to hear.
It's been said before that had the two of you not led a campaign like this, there might not have been a Trek at all in the modern day. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
Yeah, if the show, in those days, a show had to have at least 3 seasons to go into syndication when it was done. If it had only 2 seasons, it would have been just in the can shell.
And right for the rest of time. That was all that would have happened. You would never have heard of Star Trek again. And here's the thing. Right. I mean, you can check on things like this. A delightful little TV show called My World and Welcome to It was, by the way, with William Wyndham, was about 1.5 seasons, yeah. And it was not renewed, and it was taken off the air, and you've never seen it since. And a funny little science fiction story called Quark, where there's something about intergalactic garbage men or something, utterly silly and loads of fun, and send-ups. I mean, there was a Darth Vader kind of character in it that was, wasn't too sure just whether it was a villain or not.
It had half a season and canceled it because they didn't understand it. They didn't get the whole thing.
And they really didn't understand science fiction either. And then, of course, they were always trying to get rid of Star Trek because Gene was a loose cannon. I mean, he was admittedly a loose cannon. And,
sure.
he said things like, well, there's 430 people, on the original Enterprise, and only a quarter of them are women. But that's enough women to take care of that many men. And, NBC went straight up and turned left.
Yeah.
And you never know if he was sincere or not. Sometimes because...
If you knew what to look for, you could see the twinkle in his eye.
Really?
Okay, all right.
Smile starting to form. So we could pretty much tell when he was getting a nod. But
sure,
the suit never could.
And because of that, it made them very, very nervous. Of course, which I think was Gene's idea, just keep them on their toes. And then they never know what to expect.
What do you think of the television ratings systems? Because NBC clearly would argue that the ratings weren't good for Star Trek; it needed to be canceled. But then, of course, going into syndication, it explodes. It leads to a top-grossing motion picture. Clearly, there was interest there that they didn't understand.
Yeah,
exactly. Well,
the ratings, frankly, the Nielsen ratings were rigged. We had a fan friend of ours actually somehow got to be a Nielsen family. And they started getting out. Supposedly, nobody knew anybody else who was a Nielsen family. Very shortly after they got the thing and they brought the box to record what they were doing.
Set. Yeah.
And they started getting newsletters from the Nielsen families.
Especially the Southern Baptist Church group, and they began telling this science fiction couple what shows to watch and what shows not to watch.
Yeah. So.
And so the Nielsen's were rigged.
Our friends would tune into anything with a science fiction or fantasy theme that was on TV, even if they weren't going to watch it, and just leave the show with that on.
And in a short time, they came and took away the little box.
Within 6 months,
okay.
But yeah, we actually have real proof that, well, we don't anymore, he's gone, but that the Nielsen ratings were rigged. The thing is, because they were rigged, you could claim just about anything. How would the rest of us know?
Right.
Now, in today's atmosphere,
It's a lot harder to do.
with people, going into investigative type of things, they might have been able to find out. But back in the 60s and 70s, no, they couldn't have found out.
Well, then all
Sure.
the fake news that's going on these days,
Wow.
So that's exciting.
And there's also things like Netflix is a streaming service that there's a lot of shows on, but they don't release any of their financial or their streaming data. So they've recently canceled a couple popular shows, and their excuse was it wasn't economical. They couldn't justify producing the show because not enough people were watching it. But we don't know if that's really true or
No,
not.
and you never will, really, unless you find somebody
Right.
who works in the business.
So more court speak. as it were.
Really. And this is the annoying thing is in just about the entire entertainment industry, but especially television, whether it's the streaming or just regular stuff, they can do just about anything they wish and claim just about anything they wish, and we have no way of proving it. Not if we find somebody who works inside that business who's willing to risk a job.
Let's talk about movies. Bjo, you had an opportunity to be an extra in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Can you tell me about that?
Well, John could have too, except again, the stupid job. But
Sure.
they had already made all the uniforms, and so all of the uniforms for women were made for 5'5" to 5'8".
Okay.
Yes, well, I'm 5'3", and so I'm the only person there whose uniform bagged. But that's okay because I was actually pretty far back in the crowd. The nice little lady in the two-piece tan suit in front, with short hair, is that is Mrs. Robert Wise.
Oh, okay, sure. The director,
Right.
sure.
But I just kind of let myself be put back because I realized that all of these professional extras really needed face time. I didn't.
Yeah, right.
I was just here for the fun of it, and I was enjoying myself thoroughly, and that's all we really needed.
That whole wreck deck scene came about because Robert Wise said to Gene, you keep saying that there's X number of people on this set. We never see them. Mm-hmm. Which, of course, in the TV world, they didn't have the budget to be able to have that many people.
Right, yeah. The 430 men and women under my command, yeah.
So he said, let's put a scene in the film where we do see, have this huge crowd of crew members on this wreck deck where Shatner addresses them and tells them about the gorilla that's going to eat them. And so that's what they did. And so they in those days, there was the Screen Actors Guild and the Screen Extras Guild. They're fine now, but there were separate guilds in those days. So Gene went to the Screen Extras Guild and said, we're going to need about X number of people. I'm willing to put half of them from the Extras Guild, which is the big thing for them, I'll say. But I'm going to go on the street for the rest of them. Since he was going to have half of the amount of people, that was more than was usually on a movie set. So they agreed, and so then we get a call from one of the Star Trek office secretaries who said, "How would you like to be in the new Star Trek movie?"
Oh, do you know anyone? That was it. Do you
that
know anyone who would like to be in the new Star Trek movie? Is this a trick question?
Right.
And we were supposed to, several fans were asked to do this, and we were supposed to not show anybody from out of state because Gene didn't want them flying in, being in, for casting and not get a part. And he didn't want that disappointment. Well, you know how fast the news reached the East Coast.
And overseas.
And people came in from everywhere. And they did understand because the letter that went out, told people, you have, we only have like 130 people, I think it was, to cast, there's no way everybody's going to get in here, you see. And
Right.
so we, but everybody came in from everywhere.
So the casting call was held on the lot. There was a grandstand set up so that they could assemble everybody there. And
That was crammed.
they sent Gene out somewhere. They wouldn't let him be there for the casting call. And Robert
Well, he was
Wine,
very kind to fans, and he would have said, "I'm sorry, I know this person is, extremely fat, but, they've been such good fans, cast them somewhere." So, yeah, they didn't need that.
so the director and makeup guy and somebody else
Yeah.
went down the line. They called X number of people down off the stand, like a whole row. And they'd walk down the line and say, yes, yes, no, 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 yes, yes, no. Now, ordinarily, for a casting call like that, the people who were not chosen would go away. The fans went back up into the stands, and they couldn't figure that out. All the fans wanted to see if their friends were chosen.
And cheer them on, So it was an interesting
Right.
night for the casting people because they had no clue what all was going on, and those of us who did get in,
Well, Rachel was
yeah.
cast. I mean, it was given she was going to be in it.
Sure.
and John would have too, but he couldn't come. And the thing, the uniform was made out of ski pant material, the whole uniform, which meant that if you felt that if you bent over a little bit, you'd snap, shut. And the zippers were down the back. And at one point, David Gerrold, who was also in the movie, said, "I have to go potty. Will somebody come and unzip me?" And about 3 girls volunteered, and I said, "Oh, no, not really." But the uniforms, frankly, were uncomfortable. The shoes were built into the uniform, and again, they were built for somebody much taller than me and much bigger
Right.
feet. It just, and then of course they were white and light gray and light tan, and so of course they served us lunch over on another stage. That's because they didn't want to let us out of their sight to wander around and find the cafeteria. So, guess what they served us?
What?
Barbecue chicken.
Okay.
Oh, and watermelon. And it was one of these. So we stood over trash cans, feeding each,
Right.
and it was insane. So, and Grace Lee Whitney and Jimmy Doohan and Michelle and Walter all came over to have lunch with us. Oh yeah, of course, always George, and came over and had lunch with us, and
Sure.
kind of got up and made the rounds and talked to a lot of fans, and that was very thrilling.
That's great.
It was going to be
Yeah.
2 days worth of shooting, but at the end of toward the end of the day, Mr. Wise said, "Well, we'd set aside 2 days because, of course, half the people here are amateurs, but they're doing so well that we can go on and finish it Monday." And so our day started when we got at the studio at 4 a.m., and it ended at 12:30 that night. And my feet hurt clear up to my hat rim.
Sure.
So half the people there headed over across the street for margaritas, and John came
Sure.
and picked me up and took my tired little body home. But
Right.
but it was fun. It was a thrill. It's not something I probably want to do again, but
Right.
certainly if I was offered it, I always hoped that Gene did a few guest things on the episodes. And I always hoped that I could do, something like a little bag lady walking down the promenade.
Right. Sure.
Well, I'm not exactly prepossessing. I'm 5'2" because I'm shrinking, and freckles and a little dumpy, and so I'm good with that. And I know I'm not a glamour girl. It's like my daughter said about seeing the first Tolkien movie was everybody wanted to be an elf, right? Tall, graceful, gorgeous. And so did she until one of the hobbits said, "Well, what about our Levinses? What about and what about some breakfast?" And she said, "I'm a hobbit." We're realists around here.
Sure. I should ask, do the two of you have a favorite Trek film, or for that matter, a favorite episode of Star Trek?
Okay. My favorite of the films is Star Trek IV because of the interactions between the characters. It's a very light film in many ways.
Right.
But it was there was a lot of humor in it, and it without diminishing the drama at all. It was really beautifully done. I know it's got plot holes in it, the size of the Grand Canyon.
Well, it's
but
science fiction.
Yeah, that is my favorite of the Star Trek film.
I have to agree with John.
Okay.
I really enjoy that, and we will stop and watch that. Well, we have all of the films now, but when it came up on television, we'd stop and watch it in spite of commercials. And
Sure.
as far as an episode is concerned, I think John's is Next Generation.
Yeah. Next Generation, The Inner Light. It's a two-parter.
Oh, sure.
And I think it is one of the more beautiful television episodes ever filmed. A lot of heart to it.
Bjo, what about you?
Oh, I don't know if I really have a favorite. I guess Trouble with Tribbles, because I like to laugh. And,
Sure.
And the idea of an ecologically damaging incident, but with something that's cute and fuzzy and purrs, and you can't even find the right end of it, is pretty funny. And that was the start of our friendship with David Gerrold, because.
Okay, we met David at the World Science Fiction Convention in New York in 1967.
Okay.
And he said, "Your name is Trimble? Oh my gosh, I think I've caused you a world of hurt."
Right.
But David and our kids just adore him, because he's such a crazy person. When he got his first ice cream maker, of course, typical male, he didn't read the instructions. I mean, those are for people who aren't incredible, and and the first ice cream he made was so solid that he had to leave it out in the sun for several
They
days.
get the beater out.
Okay.
And the second one was syrup, and finally he came up, he realized, well, I need something to put in there that'll hold the ice cream together. So he made this amazing mixture, and very tasty, that he called Kitty Litter Crunch. And it was granola and nuts and chocolate chips and coconut in a creamy vanilla sort of caramelly.
But there was
Yeah.
certainly granola and coconut.
And it was, when you dish it up, it sort of looked like that. And but I think he's one of the only people in the world that would come up with Kitty Litter Crunch ice cream.
That sounds delicious.
It is. It really
It was great.
And he also would play board games with the kids, and when he was lucid, something would happen that would
Earthquake.
cause the board to get all unadjusted, and they'd have to start over.
I've heard from some author friends I know that he is a wonderful guy, and I've reached out. I've tried to get him on my show, and he was talking to an author friend of mine, and he said that he might be able to do it, but he wanted to remind me that he has written things other than Tribbles.
Yes, and in fact he has, and they are excellent. And
Yes.
and also he does things like at conventions. He has a little bank out in front of him for autographs, and he says, "I'm charging for autographs," and of course that's not a big surprise. What he wants you to do is put whatever you can afford into the little bank, because that goes back to LA to Angel Food, which is a group that feeds HIV victims and their pets.
Okay.
Many people
That's great.
will not adopt a pet that has belonged to somebody with HIV.
He's just dumb.
I'm like, hello, a cough is more catching than that, and your dog's,
Right.
But anyway, so
Yeah.
and that is such a worthwhile sort of thing. So John and I picked it up, but we charge to give money to no-kill shelters. We're all pet lovers, so
People should know, if they don't already, that you published the first reference books for Star Trek, the Star Trek Concordance, which was published by Ballantine Books, but you initially published it yourself, isn't that right?
Yes. In fact, we ran it off again on the infamous.
Yeah, you had a mimeograph.
Well, no, actually, there wasn't any of that. The first ones we took down to a person who had an offset printing business, and it was printed by them. And then,
That's right.
partway through the whole thing, we acquired an offset press ourselves for publishing a newsletter for another organization we belong to. And so we ran off subsequent copies ourselves.
But on the other hand, of course, we had all these many pages to collate. So if you bought a concordance and came over to our house to pick it up, you had to collate your own copy.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
We know several fans that we're friends with now who indeed collated their Star Trek Concordance.
Sure.
So, and then Valentine picked it up, and then it went on to Citadel Press, which promptly went bankrupt about a year after it came out, and we were informed that in the warehouse were about 6,000 copies of the book, and if we could come up with the price for them, they'd ship them to us. Something of a terrifying threat, but we couldn't get up the money to pay for it. So
those were all false.
I can't imagine the effort that must have gone into compiling all the data to go into the book. Did you use videotapes or audio tapes to review the shows for the information?
And eventually scripts. We lucked into something kind of wonderful. I was actually in the publicity department because we knew somebody there, and I read everything. And there was a Star Trek script there, and I opened it, and it looked very strange. And I said, "What in the world is this?" And he said, "Oh, it's a dialogue script. The person goes through and listens for every sound, like the bang of a door or a crash or something, and somebody whistling, and then what everybody says exactly as they're saying it on the screen, not following the script. Sometimes they deviate a little from that, and that allows us to cut the episode without it being too obvious. And that's to go out to ships and to various places where cut versions are more feasible. And I said, "Wow, that's great." And he said, "I'm throwing these scripts out, and would you like me to throw them in your direction?" Yes. So we took all the boxes out and loaded them in my car.
We had dialogue scripts for all 39 episodes. When
79.
79, however many there were.
Oh, right.
I thought I was the one who couldn't count.
Well, and I've slept since then. So when we were doing the concordance, she could, we could watch the episode, but she could also sit down and go, using the dialogue scripts, record what was actually said.
Yeah, which was a big help because Leonard Nimoy, for instance, could never remember the name of an alien creature. And I've forgotten which it is, but there was a D'Amato or a Mugato, I've forgotten which. Anyway, he changed it over to the other one, and things like that. You had to catch that because if the other word wasn't said, I couldn't put it in the book. Now all of this started, giving credit where credit is due, when another Star Trek, we were all brand new Star Trek fans in those days, started keeping notes on 3x5 cards of all the things she liked about Star Trek. And pretty soon that got to be a pretty big pile. And I said, we ought to put this together and make a fan magazine out of it because I think others would like it. Well, about that time, she discovered religion and men at the same time, lost interest, and handed me all the notes and said, well, there you go. And I had, meanwhile, been adding to her notes, and so it was just kind of an easy step to continue. And I just recently found her again. She's been missing in my life for about 25 years, and we had quite a talk about it. And she said, no, she said, I long ago gave up any claim to the book. So there we are.
I have a copy of the 77 version, and it's one of my prized possessions. I love that it has a wheel built into the cover that lets you select the episode and the info.
I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, was that the Balancine's idea?
That was it. Yeah. Well, their art department knew what to do. They and they had. See, I collected from fans. That's all fan art. I wanted large pictures of like the major characters and so on, but then small pictures to go with the entries. Like a lot of encyclopedias have those kind of pictures, And Valentine put it together correctly. Citadel, which had a bunch of idiots in their art department, they wouldn't let me put it together. I'd been a graphics artist for many years, and didn't trust me. So when I got it, besides the terrible cover, I got, they had used the full page stuff for little tiny entries, and they'd use little tiny entries for full page pictures and everything. It was one of these. No, but yeah. This is what happens to you with books, Yeah,
we knew Judy Lynn Benjamin, who was later Judy Lynn Del Rey, who was the editor at Valentine at the time. So we were able to talk with her and give her the ideas that we wanted, and Bjo was able to send the stuff through and tell them where they wanted to go. They didn't get everything right, but they got most of it.
Most of it is the best an author can expect. I mean,
I suppose.
Arthur C. Clarke said, what you do is you take the money and you walk away.
You wrote another book on the good ship Enterprise. Right. Can you tell me about that?
Well, it was an utterly silly book. It was a humorous thing of telling some anecdotes. Now, I understand these anecdotes are fairly old now, but just various things that happened to us and some of the actors and just some fun stories. And I'd love to update it because having met almost all of the people in all of the series so far, and there are stories. There's some fun stories. I didn't tell any bad stories because even though they happened, nobody needs to know. These are things that happen to these people under duress, under stress, hard work, late hours. Nobody needs to spread those around. As far as I'm concerned, that's just gossip, and I was just recently asked why I took some Star Trek fans to task on the internet on one thing because they had been acting mean. And I said, we should be above that. Star Trek ideals, it is doesn't include gossiping and saying bad things about people. I mean, all of us can say bad things about people if we wanted to out loud. And God knows plenty of people do on the internet. But I don't have to listen to it, and I don't have to put up with it. And if I don't speak up, then they don't know why I've left the scene. Right? And so many people don't like confrontation. And I don't either, but there are times when both John and I feel that we need to speak up about things.
This is something up with which we do not need to put.
Yeah. Quote Winston Churchill. Yeah. So that's about it for our attitudes on things like that.
Sure. Speaking of the internet, and also just speaking of things to come for Star Trek Discovery is planned to come out fairly soon, hopefully, fingers crossed. Yeah. And a lot of people on the internet have had issues, or supposedly some people on the internet have issues with the fact that they feel like, boy, I'm trying to elucidate their argument and I don't really understand it, like that white men aren't represented enough, I guess, in the show. They don't like the diversity in the show.
They don't understand EDIC, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Come on, give me a...
Yes.
And as you know,
Yes.
it's like a critic. I swear that this really happened. A critic of the Wonder Woman movie said, "Well, it's all feminists." Have you ever read the comic books, kiddo? I mean,
Yeah, right.
you know, there just hasn't been enough men represented in movies lately. I'm thinking,
Oh, right.
really? Let's go back over some of the titles, Cookie. What are you talking about? You know, people were very unkind to Carrie Fisher in the last Star Wars movie that she appeared, not the one CGI, but and you know, because she was looking older. Hello. She is older.
Right.
I'm older. You know, Harrison Ford is older.
Look at Harrison Ford.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he looks like a desert ravine, and nobody says anything about him.
Exactly. It's
And-
always...
Right.
It's like Barbara Streisand said one time. When she was directing a film, I don't remember which one it was now. The comments on were that she was, when somebody interviewed her, she seemed awfully bitchy. Well, okay. So if a woman, if she expresses some strong opinion, is bitchy. A guy, if he expresses strong opinions, is forthright and, manly and all that kind of stuff.
When people say and do things like this, it shows their ignorance.
Yeah.
It isn't even, I mean, it is intolerance, but I mean, it's more ignorance than anything else. And I really would like to think, maybe I'm wrong, I'd like to think that Star Trek fans, the people John and I have known for all of these years, are better than that. Are not as...
And for the most part, they are.
I will say this. We never got a dime from Paramount or from Gene Roddenberry for running the campaign. I don't care what a couple of books say. But our wealth, frankly, has been the fans. We have met an amazing number of fans from all over the world. Sometimes we were in the spot, sometimes they were over here. In Japan, had a girl walk up to us and say, make a Spock signal, and then say, Star Trek? And
we traveled around Japan. The one time we were able to visit there with about anywhere from 30 to 50 Star Trek fans, depending on their schedule. And it was delightful. They were utterly charming. They would, we had a fan, one of the Japanese fans pay our way through to a subway that we were going to travel on. And we said, we said to one of the other fans, well, what's going on? They're paying this, and then we got treated to meals and such. And we said, had one of them explain to us. He said, well, you see, Mr. and Mrs. Trimble,
we do that all the time.
the people, it's what they can afford. The students and the others will pay the subway because it doesn't cost much. Those of us who have higher paying jobs and that sort of thing, we like to treat you to things. I mean, it was wonderful.
But and we ran across this everywhere. We met a whole bunch of just lovely students in Prague, and they all had pooled all their money to take us to a fancy dinner. And we said, do you have like beer pubs around? And they would, yeah, but yeah, let's go to the beer pub. I mean, come on, dang.
And these are not places we travel to our own way. We have been guests at conventions in various places in the world. We've been to England and Ireland. Well, England several times, Ireland once. We've been to Germany several times, the Czech Republic twice, to
New Zealand, Australia, all invitations. This has fallen off considerably because we're considered, the old farts who don't know anything except the original series.
Oh.
Oh yeah, and it has been discussed by some people that you don't really need to invite the Trimbles because they can drop dead at your convention, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, but
But we've been lucky to have been guests at conventions all over the world. We've met fans from all over the world as a result of it, and it hasn't given us any money, but it's certainly enriched our lives.
And all of them have been very, very kind to our oldest daughter, who is mentally handicapped. She's 52 now, and she is about an 8-year-old intelligence, which means she can talk to you for about half an hour before you catch on. And and she's an avid Star Trek fan. And she looked at George. We came out of Wrath of Khan, and she looked at George. Now, George lives down, at that time, 2 blocks down the street. And she had just seen the movie, and she's looking at him, and all of a sudden, with no warning, she says, "You're him!" And she had made this connection, finally, that
George and Mr. Google.
That, yes, and of course, everybody tracked.
We were at a screening at Paramount that they had set up for Ricardo Montalban because his family was up from Mexico and he wanted to show them the pictures. So Catherine had,
fans were invited still in the spaces.
So we came out of the theater and we're all kind of milling around out in front, and Ricardo Montalban came out with his family, and he was standing talking to people, and
he was standing there looking gorgeous.
Yeah, and we said to Catherine, "Do you know who that?" She'd already made the George connection, so we thought, "Okay, we'll try that." You know who that is, Catherine? She looks over at Ricardo Montalban. Now, here is this urbane, handsome man, and she's trying to. We were trying to see if she'd make the connection with that madman she just saw on the screen.
Right.
And she stands there for a while, and she's looking at him. And she says, "I know him. Would you like to meet him?" Yes. So we took her over, and we said, "Montalban, we would like you to meet our daughter, our handicapped daughter."
We didn't say handicapped. We didn't want him to know.
So he turned to her, and she said, "You're Mr. Rourke, Fantasy Island," one of the favorite TV shows. And he looked at her, he took her hand, and said, "Yes, my dear, I am." And kissed her hand. We could have taken her home with a string.
And then she said something that it broke everybody's heart. She said, "You have made people like me feel real."
And that's what he said to her, "My dear, you are a real person. Don't let anyone tell you anything different." I already liked him a whole lot and admired him a whole lot. That cemented any feelings I had about Ricardo Montalban. Wow.
So, we treasure these kind of experiences as well as the experiences we've had with various fans. And really, we look back on these things that have, we think, without sounding soppy, well, it does sound soppy, enriched our lives with so many wonderful people. Do we have a few nernies? Yes, of course. All groups have. Sure. But I think we have less, or they just are shy about speaking up around us. I don't know.
Maybe they know better.
Yeah. Or maybe they're talking about us behind our back. I don't know. There's this little thing of, type your name in here and you'll find out what everybody thinks of you. And I thought, why would you do this?
Right.
This is insane. Never do this.
I have to ask, as people who have attended conventions for a long, long time now, how have you seen conventions in the world of fandom change over the decades?
Well, they're more corporate now.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
They're in many cases they're not conventions; they're shows.
Yeah.
So we came up out of the science fiction fandom world, where conventions were groups of fans convening.
And where authors came not for a speaker's fee, but because they liked fans and they started out in fandom in many cases. And, you know, and so it was a lot more cozy and smaller. And today there are not very many fan conventions left in Star Trek because they've been pretty well wiped out by the assorted corporate conventions around the United States and around the world. There's a huge convention in Germany that has pretty well wiped out all fan conventions in the area.
The conventions changed from being a convening of fans to being a profit-making venue, and that's when they changed from fan-run things to groups that just put on the conventions for profit.
Right.
Now, would we go to one of these? Of course. In fact, last year we're invited because we can't afford to go on our own money. Last year, because it was the 50th, we were invited to the big Star Trek convention in Las Vegas.
Oh, right, in Vegas.
Oh,
Right.
it's huge. And it was fun because there were so many little side things. Like there was a huge hallway that led to the various rooms. And in the hallway, they had put up all kinds of things, manned by the fans, but, like there was a whole Tribble patch. And you could go over there and pick them up and play with them, and there was a fan there to prevent you from running off with them, but otherwise, and of course pose with them and so on. And as simple as that, there was always somebody there taking advantage of, all of these Tribbles, every color you could think of. And the little kids loved it. They would just throw themselves down on the Tribbles and scrooge around on the floor, and it was such a kick to watch them. Things like that. And there's amazing programming, I will say that. I ended up
treated like real celebrities at this thing.
Yeah, really.
That hasn't happened a whole lot.
Well, you are celebrities.
But it isn't. It doesn't always happen. Not that we'll be invited to any more of them because it's not the 50th year anymore, and we're not. I mean,
Right.
if you look at the lineup, for instance, they have nearly 100 people from the movie industry, from the TV industry, and and we're not. So, but would we go to conventions anymore? Yes, of course, we would love to. We love to travel, and
in over the 4th of July weekend, we're special guests at WesterCon 70. This is a regular science fiction convention. It's been going on, obviously, for 70 years. And we actually ran a couple of them in the early days.
Okay.
So, we're
and that's going to be fun because we'll be seeing a bunch of science fiction friends we haven't seen in a long time.
Sure.
A local Phoenix, Arizona area fan club sponsored us for this. So they're flying us over. They're putting us in the hotel. We're doing some program. I mean, it's great. And we'll meet with all the fans. And,
And we have a little habit that kind of startles fans. That when we go down for breakfast, we join other parties.
Okay.
If there's a couple of fans talking, and we'll come up and hi. They haven't ordered yet. We go, would you like some company? And they're going, yeah, sure. And and then we get to meet them and we talk.
We've met a lot of interesting people over the years that we would not have ordinarily met because of that.
Yeah, conventions are great for that.
Oh yeah, I do love. I will tell you a real quick story about John Lancie. He is massively dyslexic, and the reason he can do his scripts so well is that his wife reads them to him until he's memorized them, and he memorizes them so thoroughly that if somebody else blows a line and needs help, they don't look at the script supervisor. They look at John, who can tell them exactly where they should be. And at one convention, yes, at one convention that we were guests at, he told the audience that he was dyslexic, and heads went up everywhere. And he said, people have made this a shameful thing, like you can't read, so there's something really, really wrong with you. And he said, this is terrible. And, for all of you who are dyslexic, let's meet in the meeting room in the back of the hotel restaurant, and we'll all have breakfast together. And no one else can sneak in, because if you are dyslexic, you can read the menu and we'll throw you out. Stan said that was one of the most encouraging things they had gotten out of that convention, because someone was admitting up front and out loud that they had this handicap that
Right.
the fans' family sometimes run them down for that, and just who needs that? Just encourage people.
Well, there's so much more that we can talk about, and this has been really great. But I should let you guys go. I want to thank you for talking with me today.
Right.
Well, you're more than welcome.
Invite us back if your audience likes it.
Live long and prosper.
You live long and prosper as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again to the Trimbles for donating their time to speak with me. It was so much fun. They probably get sick of hearing this, mostly because they're practical and humble people. But they really are an integral part of the history of Trek, unquestionably. And it was an amazing experience getting to relive that history with them. And I hope you enjoyed it too. So thanks again, Bjo and John. Hope to talk to you again soon. Something we never got to in the interview, but that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, is that Bjo and John are craftspeople as well, and they own a business called Ancient Earth Pigments, which produces traditional pigments for use in crafting and dyeing. They also hold workshops about dyeing with natural pigments. The pigments are natural, so they're ecological, which is a plus. They also offer tools and supplies for sale for people looking to do some dyeing. You can find all of this at ancientearthpigments.com. So go check that out. It's at ancientearthpigments.com. Remember, listeners, you can join in on the conversation and maybe have your comment read on the air. Just go to facebook.com/EISTpod or find us at EISTpod on Twitter or through our social media links on enterprisingindividuals.com. You can also reach the show at EISTpod@gmail.com with feedback and suggestions, or to just say hello. We're waiting to receive your transmission. And that's it for this supplemental episode of Enterprising Individuals. If you're an iTunes listener and you haven't yet, why not look us up on iTunes? Make sure you're subscribed to the show. Also, write a little review. If the spirit moves you, and give us a rating at the very least, we'd appreciate it. If you're not on iTunes, you can still subscribe to the show on Google Play or Stitcher or our Spreaker page or wherever you get your show from. And if you leave positive comments and ratings on those platforms as well, we would be eternally grateful. Next time on Enterprising Individuals. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The long promised arrival of New York Times best-selling author Dayton Ward finally occurs next week, just as the Enterprise arrives at Cestus 3 and finds the entire colony destroyed. What follows is a tense pursuit through space and a fight to the death with 2 ships and 2 crews at stake against one pissed-off lizard man. Get your entertainment here next week as Dayton Ward and I wrestle with and Dropkick and Double Axe Handle the original series episode Arena next time on Enterprising Individuals. And until then, I'm your Captain Caliban signing off and saying, live long and prosper.